Going on around the ring? Well, we do have one fight announcement to make. Robert Whittaker versus RDR Rene Di Ridwa, coming off his big victory over Bo Nickel last weekend. He's getting Robert Whittaker now.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how because he was a former 2-division champion, he might get a good bump up the rankings, because Bo wasn't even ranked yet. So, yeah, he's getting a big bump up to former champion Robert Whittaker.
Mm-hmm.
Very tough fight. I think it's a tough matchup for RDR. Definitely bigger, but I got my money on Whittaker, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with RDR was that he basically had a great matchup with Bo Nickel because of Bo Nickel's inexperience elsewhere. But with Whittaker, you're right, it's a tough match because Whittaker's good everywhere.
Yeah.
So this is just the opposite. And Whittaker's that. The only thing is Whittaker, he's had so many wars. That could be the Ridwar's chance here, but we shall see. Look, how do you say his last name?
Renier de Ritter.
Renier de Ritter. Thank you. I was just like calling him. I feel like I'm calling him a Batman.
Well, I just call him RDR.
RDR, that works. Let's get into UFC 315, Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena. And before we talk about his main card, any other fights on this show you want to talk about? Or
Jasmine Jasdavicius choked out Jessica Andrade. This is 2 straight losses after winning 2 and losing 3 before that. So she's having a tough go lately, but I think this is more about Jasmine, who looked great in her home country of Canada, and she's put 5 wins together now. So I think people got to start keeping an eye on her. Let's get into this main card because that's what we're all here for. So Benoit Saint-Denis versus Kyle Preplik.
Yeah, Saint-Denis came out aggressive. Kyle, he wasn't just there to let it payday, though. I thought, he came back, but, in the end, he started to come back a little bit, I thought, in round 2. And before he's down. He's in an arm triangle choke and his fight's over. So I feel like he's game, but I also just feel like he just isn't in the same class as Benoit Saint-Denis. Benoit Saint-Denis, man, I mean, this was a guy that was on fire, and then, he ran into a couple tough opponents. I know Dustin Poirier being one of them, and who was his last one?
Hanato Moicano, I believe.
Hanato Moicano, yeah. So, it's just about trying to rebound, but we're going to have to see him up against elevated competition to see how well he's really improved, right? This was more like a fight to get, I feel like, his confidence back at the end of the day. As far as future opponents, Rafael Fiziev, who I know's had almost a similar thing, but I feel like is maybe a few levels up. At least I feel like he is, but maybe we can find out. Let's book the fight.
Patty might be fun too. That might be a fun fight.
Patty, I feel, is due for some bigger fights, but yes, that would be a fun one for sure.
Back to this fight, BSD was a big favorite for a reason, obviously. Respect to Kyle, stepped in on 5 days notice or something like that. Returning back to the UFC, big opportunity for him, but it was always going to be tough for him. He's a striker first, which he got taken down immediately in that first round and just held down basically. Mm-hmm. So, he did land some shots in the second round with BSD coming at him, but he was just miles better on the ground than Kyle. So good for Benoit to get back in the win column. He had lost a couple in a row, like you mentioned. And I hope that they rebook this Joel Alvarez fight because I'm a big fan of that guy. I think people should keep an eye out on him. He's an exciting fighter and he's very dominant. So I think that's a good match, him and Benoit Saint-Denis. So hopefully they'll keep Kyle around for one more at least, because I feel bad to come in, get beat up in your home country and fighting a guy who's miles and miles better than you, or supposedly. So
appreciate the comments, Scrippo. Be all losing was probably the worst thing that ever happened to Palestine. Well,
yeah, maybe we don't need to click every comment.
I was looking at this first comment.
That's a wild comment. So
David will make sure to read a little more carefully.
All right, moving on. Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva. Sylvia,
she looked great here. Honestly, I was just really impressed. I just thought she looked so much sharper and quicker than Grasso. And honestly, I know you weren't surprised by this. You talked about this last week, but I just figured Grasso, former champ, she was going to be hungry looking in there. And not to say she wasn't, but Naso just looked like the better fighter to me. To me, she should be getting a title shot next against Valentina. I don't think she's the clear choice right now.
Yeah, the divisions, Valentina's fought basically everyone at this point, at the top. So Natalia truly outclassed a recent former champion. So tremendous speed advantage. Her footwork was great. Her striking is very fun to watch, and she's a fun personality. So yeah, I'm excited for whatever she does next. If she doesn't get the title shot next, I mean, she's still very young. Like, I think she might be the youngest women's fighter on the roster or something like that. So you don't need to move her along too fast, but she just beat a former champ. So maybe title shots next. This was a good fight, but a bit of a bummer. Jose Aldo versus Aiemann Zahabi.
Zahabi, I thought Aldo was doing enough to win the fight, but Zahabi came on super strong at the end of this and really dominated, that last round. But did you think he did it? I'll let you talk about this. I think his next opponent, Mario Batista, actually, just want to throw that out there. But what do you think? Do you think he actually won the fight?
I'd have to watch it again. When I watched it, like, I wasn't upset with the decision. I thought it was very close. I think that third round is so hard to score because early on, I mean, Jose was kicking him in the head and he was flying all around. And then once Zahabi got him down, Jose just was so tired that he couldn't even defend elbows just straight on his head. He couldn't even put his hands up. So very tough to score.
I will say Aldo, of course, retiring after this fight too. I don't want to not there's that. And I guess maybe that was a good reason to retire too when you think about it. So even if you could argue he won the fight, he just didn't seem, to have it right there in that moment. And, he had a very difficult weight cut, obviously. And he talked about that. He said it wasn't just a weight cut. But I guess what other thing is to say is this is the bummer that this is probably the last Jose Aldo fight. The guy's one of the all-time greats.
Right. Yeah, we should say this fight was supposed to be at 135. Jose was unable to make the weight. Aiemann did make 135, and then they changed the weight to 145. So clearly Jose having some sort of issues, just saying his body didn't want to cut the weight anymore. As you mentioned, other issues going on, which he didn't talk about, but it was a bummer. You could tell he was very defeated. But I mean, early on, before he got tired, he was looking pretty good. He was. He was looking pretty good. So it's better to go out now while you're still looking pretty good than to, turn into a BJ Penn or something like that.
Absolutely. What other thing to do too before we get on the next fight, because we didn't talk about this ever. Vitor Belfort going into the Hall of Fame. That was absolutely on this. So cool for Vitor. Absolutely, probably some of the best finishers, TRT Vitor, whatever you want to say, but some of the best finishes in MMA history. That guy.
Yeah, I can't believe he wasn't already in there. To be honest with you, I just assumed that he was. But yeah, finishes over Rockhold. He destroyed Michael Bisping's eye.
Vanderlei.
Vanderlei. Yeah, he's a monster. He fought. They said this in the package. He's fought in every era of the UFC. The no rules era, the Pride era, the current era. Yeah, all the respect to Vitor. He's an absolute monster. Pioneer for sure. He's in the Pioneer wing, so very, very perfect setting for him. So, co-main event: Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot.
Manon Fiorot came to fight. I thought she did a good job, but I thought Valentina, once again, God, it's probably overstating it to say she's the women's MMA equivalent of Floyd Mayweather, but she just really knows how to read her opponent as time goes on. I feel like she does enough to get the victory. So don't get me wrong, she's had some finishes in her career too, and she's great, but there's also this element to her game where as the fight goes on, it seems like she knows how to read her opponent, dissect it, and pull off the victory. I thought she did enough to win here, but I thought it was a close fight. This could be a fight down the road we see again. It wasn't I wouldn't say it was super exciting or anything, but it was a close one. Like I said earlier, I think Silva should be the one. Now Silva should be the next one to fight Shevchenko. At some point, maybe Shevchenko, before she retires, deserves a shot to go up in weight class. But right now with Kayla Harrison and Pena next and Amanda Nunes
talking about comeback. Yeah.
So let's just make another fight for her. But yeah, I thought great performance by Valentina overall.
Yeah, I didn't think the fight was really that close. Fiorot is a kickboxer, and she basically got turned into, she's a straight kickboxer, and she got turned into a wrestler. So I never really thought she had much of a chance during the fight. I mean, once her nose was broken in that first round too, you could tell that was affecting her a lot. So same thing with the Justin Gaethje Max Holloway fight. That when Max finished that first round, that spinning kick, and broke his nose, it changed the whole fight. You can't breathe. Anytime you get touched there, it's like a flash. So, maybe they run it back again at some point and she doesn't get her nose broken in the first round. But as far as Valentina, she did look like she has slowed down a tiny bit. She is in her late 30s for sure. Yeah. She's got a lot of fights, a lot of Muay Thai fights before this. But I think all that experience is lends to what you were talking about, where she just seems to figure out a way to win. Very high fight IQ. So I think it's going to have to be a wrestler that beats Valentina. Natalia, I'm very high on her, and she would have a tremendous speed advantage, but I don't see a kickboxer striker beating Valentina at this point. So that being said, I don't know how many more Valentina has left. Like you said, chances of her going up to 135, not super great right now, at least, and she has a lot of fights. She's been around a long time. She's cleaned out most of the division, so I'm not sure what's next for her. Main event: Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena.
JDM. I mean, I said last week, I thought, styles make fights, and I thought that he'd be able to neutralize some of the clinching and wrestling, and he would have the edge in striking. That being said, man, Belal, not only did he come to fight like this, was a very exciting fight. I love the meme somebody posted in our group where it was borrowing from the Avengers with Thanos. Did you fight exciting? Yes. What did it cost you? Everything. Because maybe Belal, maybe he should have tried to shoot a few more takedowns, though, right? But would it matter? Do you think JDM, was going to be able to keep stopping it, or what do you think?
Well, first of all, I thought JDM's takedown defense was great.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, Belal didn't do what made him champ. He waited until the third or fourth round to even start really threatening with real takedown attempts. So, and by then he was tired, and JDM had kind of beat him up already, and JDM was feeling himself for sure. So, Belal wanted to prove that he could be an exciting fighter and all this. And, like you said, what does it cost you? And he's 36 years old, and he's going to the back of the line now. And we know he's not the most exciting fighter, not the most marketable fighter. Let's say that. He's not the most marketable fighter. And the UFC does not want him to be champion. Right. So, he's going to have to either start knocking a bunch of people out or submitting them, or he's got to win minimum 3 or 4 to get back to a title shot. So, probably not going to happen for him, unfortunately. I'm a fan of the guy, and I think I said this in the group chat too, but it's like he wanted his, hometown Chicago camp to experience a champ camp, training camp. So he didn't go train with Khabib. He didn't have Khabib in his corner and all that. Khabib would not have allowed him to just go out there and try to box JDM for 2.5 rounds. He would have been calling for takedowns, and that could have changed the career path for Belal. Honestly, I think if he had attempted the takedowns more, that could have worn JDM down a little bit more, because he did land on him. His boxing wasn't terrible, but
it's a close fight. That's what I'm saying.
His fight IQ, I thought his fight IQ was going to bring him through this, and he did not display that. So, what he did display is he has an excellent chin, because, he ate a lot of heavy shots. His face was all cut up and bruised, and he was still pushing forward. So, all the respect to Belal. JDM is excellent. He looked great. His striking was amazing. Like I said, takedown defense is great, but probably fighting Islam next. A little bit different, game plan coming your way, I think.
You think, he'll be the bigger guy, I would think.
I think he's got a very good chance versus Islam. He said he's going to get that one back for Volk, which, I like Islam, but I would like to see JDM win that. And send Islam back down to 155, or we can see Topuria and him fight or something. But so we'll see. If not, it's got to be Ian Gary or Shavkat if Shavkat's back. So there are contenders in line. Balal's not getting an immediate rematch. This was his first.
No, even Sean O'Brady, who got finished by Belal but had an impressive performance last time. Like, I'd imagine him.
Right, I think he's like number 1 right now. So
and I think Ian Gary's gonna be right. Shavkat, like you said, and Usman's got another fight coming up.
Buckley. Buckley and Usman are fighting. So there's
I want to back of the line. Honestly, so I don't know how big he is, but at this point in his career, maybe it's just a lot.
He looked real jacked in the cage. By the way, he looks super thick, but I don't know. He's got to do something, because trying to be exciting for the fans, all that talking shit online got to him apparently. So feel bad for the guy.
No, you're right. It's a tough break, just to be where he is at this point in his career. That's why I think maybe middleweight, because you could at least maybe get a big matchup right away, and you could be a fresh matchup if you got to win and be fighting a champion. But see how it goes. Either way, excited about JDM and Islam, and I'm excited about Topuria and Charles Oliveira. Looks like potentially he's going to be the fight now too. Ilya, I like the matchup with him and Islam if that eventually happens, if Islam doesn't beat JDM. But I do have to say, Charles Oliveira is no gimme, especially when you think about Topuria is going up in weight here, and this is about as tough as a matchup as you can really get. A guy that can, strike really well, excellent chin, can always come back, and tons and tons of submissions.
The most submissions, holds a record. Yeah, so he's very dangerous off his back. I think Topuria is so confident he's not worried about where the fight's gonna go. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very good fight. I am very excited for that fight, that matchup as well. So I'm rooting for Charles. I know he's getting near the end of his career. Topuria still has a lot left, so that's an exciting fight.